Hey everybody, Greg Pruett here, President of the Idaho Second Amendment Alliance, and we're going to launch a new podcast, I guess if you want to call it that, called Guns with Greg. Why not? This will be just a place for us to talk about various news stories happening throughout the state or throughout the country in regard to Second Amendment issues. And then we'll also have on special guests from time to time to talk about other Second Amendment issues. I think of my friend Don Kilmer, for instance, with the Second Amendment Foundation, who lives here in Idaho. The guy is extremely smart and well-versed on a lot of the legal issues happening throughout the country. So people like him, I'd love to have on to talk Second Amendment issues so that you guys can stay involved in what is happening, stay informed, and more importantly, when things are happening here in the state of Idaho, that you are ready, excuse me, to take action. I'm still trying to recover from bronchitis, man. This thing is killing me, but I'm getting there. Day by day, I'm getting there. So anyway, thanks for tuning in. Real quick today, I just wanted to cover a couple things. Number one, I'm sure that most of you by now have probably heard about the self-defense shooting that took place in Boise. A few people asked me what the business was. I don't know. The Boise Police Department, when they put out the news release, didn't specify what it was. I'll probably do a public records request to just get more information and more details from their investigation about what happened. That could take some time. If it's still an active investigation and stuff, then they won't legally release the stuff from the detectives and all that until they've completed their investigation and closed it out. So that could take some time, but I definitely want to dig into that a little bit more and find out what happened. That story is crazy. And some people I think are maybe confused on what happened. And we really don't know a ton of details outside of what BPD put out in their press release. All we know is that an 18-year-old female walked into a store. We don't know if this was she went to go steal alcohol, and so we don't know if it was an actual liquor store or it could have been just a gas station, right, that sells liquor. We don't know yet exactly what it was, but it was about, I think, 9:30 at night. It said in the press release. She walked in, was going to steal alcohol, and the employee who was there, and again, no details about the employee other than it was a male employee, were put out in the press release. It just says there was a male employee. The male employee either saw the girl getting ready to steal or she was trying to steal, and he told her to get out and don't come back. Well, she decided at that point, allegedly, according to the press release, to go up and punch this guy in the face, whoever it is. Maybe it's a younger person. I don't know. Punch him in the face. Okay, a physical altercation then ensues between the employee and this 18-year-old female. And during that, while that altercation is taking place, two more suspects come in, another 18-year-old male, and then also and here I can pull it up real quick. I should have had this up already. Somebody that's a juvenile. And obviously they don't put out the names of the juveniles when they do anything that's criminally related. It's always just referred to as a juvenile. But there was Bailey Geesey, Geesey was the female that came in, and then Junior Antonio Alvarado Hernandez was the 18-year-old male that came in, and then also this other unnamed juvenile. And so the two other people come in, the other suspects come in, and they all three of them are now jumping this employee and just beating the crap out of him, kicking, hitting, stomping, all of it, to the point where afterward the police said that they have very serious injuries, not life-threatening, but very serious injuries, and were taken to the hospital. At some point during this altercation with the employee and these three suspects, excuse me, the employee is able to retrieve a firearm. Now, they don't describe, and this is what the police report would eventually describe, but they don't describe whether or not this was a weapon that this employee had holstered and just wasn't able to get to it until it was like, oh crap, I'm like they're going to kill me potentially, with all three of them just beating the living crap out of me. And he was then able to pull it out and fire it. Or, as is the case oftentimes with businesses, a lot of the employees have it right underneath a counter, right? So, or in a drawer somewhere really close by. So there's not a description yet from the police on exactly how the employee retrieved the firearm, but they retrieved the firearm, he shot and hit Hernandez, the 18-year-old male that came in after the initial altercation with the female had started, and shot and hit him. Now, non-life threatening, but they did take him to the hospital, I assume to treat the injuries prior to eventually taking him to jail. Eventually, all three suspects were charged with felony aggravated assault, and Giese, that's the female that came in initially, was also charged with misdemeanor, commercial burglary. So again, this happened in Boise, and I think a lot of people, if you live here in Idaho, Boise is quickly becoming the Portland, Seattle of Idaho. That's the pathway of liberalism and the spread of their disgusting and destructive ideology that they take with them everywhere they go. Liberals go to these big, huge cities and just destroy them. Most metropolitan areas ran by Democrats end up getting turned into total ruin. And a lot of people believe that Boise is well on its way to becoming the next Portland or Seattle. I go to, the Capitol is in Boise, for those that don't know, and I go during the session. Now I can walk around. Now I'm always ready. Okay. But I mean, honestly, I've walked around Boise very late at night before, just, walking around, doing whatever, taking pictures of the Capitol and stuff like that. It's still a very safe city compared to Portland. Like, I would never walk around Portland, even if I was armed. I don't think I'd feel very comfortable walking around Portland or Seattle late at night. It would be extremely uncomfortable because there's a lot of criminal activity. Boise's still a fairly safe city, even with its downward trajectory that we have right now with, the mayor, Lauren McLean, and the city council and everything else that's happening in that city. And so it's still Idaho, folks. Okay. This is still an FAFO state. Like, we have constitutional carry. We have stand your ground. We have a pretty good castle doctrine. We've got some stuff that we need to work on with immunity and reimbursement when it comes to ensuring we don't have a prosecutor who just decides to target a gun owner, which has happened here. So it's not perfect, but it's pretty darn good compared to most places. In California or New York, this employee probably would end up being charged with a crime. Who freaking knows? But they defended themselves lawfully and may have saved their life having to shoot at these attackers. So, I saw one comment on, because we wrote an article about this, and I saw some comment about, I'm trying to remember what it said off the top of my head. Something like, how can the employee be the victim when they shot at the other people or something? I was like, what? And I think I actually commented, did you read the article? Because they were getting curb stomped by 3 people and then had to pull out a gun to defend themselves. That's how it doesn't matter. Like, if you shot all 3 of them dead, you're still the victim. Okay. When you're not the criminal, you're the victim. And so I don't care if they came in and pulled out a gun and the employee shot them in self-defense. Still the victim. It doesn't matter. So I don't know what that person, that one random comment was talking about, but I thought that was kind of strange. So if we get more details on this story, we'll do our best to give you guys those details. I mean, I'd love to interview the store employee and find out what in the world happened here. Like, how this is crazy, and see if we can't talk to whoever it is. Now, if I get the police reports, it's still not going to. They always redact the victim's name and stuff, so it's not even going to be in there. So unless someone knows, if somebody knows who the employee was and can put us in contact with them, I'd love to talk to him and interview him and maybe, probably when they're feeling better, given that it sounds like there's some pretty serious injuries. So the second story that we want to talk about is the McCluskey's. You guys might remember them from Missouri. There was the BLM rioters. So this is in 2020. The BLM rioters had broken through into their gated community and were marching down the streets and stuff. And the McCluskey's came out and they were holding firearms. Now, I don't know. There was some discrepancy on whether they pointed them directly at them or if they were just kind of like ready to go, okay, in case something came. I haven't seen any pictures that showed them pointing the weapons directly at them, but more of just like, hey, if you come at our house, we're gonna defend our property. So the McCluskey's ended up getting charged with initially with felonies, and they ended up pleading out. And I remember a lot of gun owners had, like, hey, why did you plead out? Well, it's a roll of the dice with the jury. You really have to decide, can I get out of, I'm being charged with a felony, or is a jury of my peers going to get me out of this or not? And that's scary. I mean, even here in Idaho, we had the Theron Cameron story, the guy who went to defend himself, or excuse me, his wife and his kids, as well as other kids at a bus stop from a crazed lunatic. And he didn't do anything wrong. And he went to jury trial. The ISAA was there watching his jury trial. And that was scary. I felt for him. I thought, oh my gosh, I can't even imagine sitting here. And he's in Ada County. Okay. So it's not like it's a super blue county, but you just never know with the jury what you're going to get. In a place like St. Louis, maybe the McCluskey's were like, yeah, we're never going to get off with the felonies. We're going to have to plead down to misdemeanors. So they plead down to misdemeanors. They plead guilty. And thankfully, the governor of Missouri pardoned them, and their records were expunged, which means essentially that it never happened, right? That's what it's supposed to mean. Well, the St. Louis Police Department didn't want to give their firearms back, and they spent he said on how many days it was. It was a lot of days. I want to say it was like 1,800 and something days. Here, give me a second, I can tell you. But they did 3 different lawsuits. Here, I'll just give you his quote. And this is on Mark McCluskey's, so this is the husband, obviously. This is on his Twitter account. It only took 3 lawsuits, 2 trips to the Court of Appeals, and 1,847 days. But I got my AR-15 back. We defended our home, were persecuted by the left, smeared by the press, and threatened with death, but we never backed down. So they were able to get their AR back. Now they're still missing the handgun that his wife was holding. If you look at the picture, if you probably remember that famous picture, but she's holding the handgun, he's holding the AR. They got the AR back. They're still fighting to get the handgun back. And this is not uncommon, by the way. I've actually had gun owners contact me saying, hey, this thing happened. I was found not guilty. I still don't have my guns. Like, how do I get my guns back? And there is a process in Idaho to get your guns back. It's just some people seem to be getting railroaded when they're trying to get their firearms back from the police department or sheriff's office or whatever the case may be. So he's got his rifle back. This is one of those cases that, like Theron Cameron, who was, in my opinion, politically prosecuted, this is what we're trying to prevent in Idaho, is the McCluskey's, the Kyle Rittenhouse type situations where somebody hasn't done anything wrong. You may not agree with why Kyle Rittenhouse was at Kenosha and all that kind of stuff. That's fine. You can disagree with why he's there. When he fired his weapon in self-defense, the video evidence, even a lot of liberals admitted, the video evidence doesn't show this guy murdered anyone. He was literally running away and people kept attacking him. So our goal here in Idaho is to stop these political prosecutions. We can't. I don't want to see another Theron Cameron here in Idaho. That was so heartbreaking to listen. Luckily, the jury, acquitted him and found him not guilty. But it's that they spent over $30,000. It was just a horrible situation, and so our goal is to stop that. And that's what our bill, this last legislative session with Senator Christy Zito, was all about, was trying to prevent the McCluskey type situation, the Rittenhouse type situation, and more specifically to Idaho, the Theron Cameron type situation. Should never happen. And so that's what we've been fighting for years. And I think now with the Theron Cameron trial specifically, some other lawmakers who have maybe been a bit of a roadblock have kind of woken up a little bit and gone, okay, yeah, this is nuts. Like, we can't allow this to happen. There's got to be a process where there's a lot more pressure on the state to go, okay, what evidence do you really have here? Or are we wasting our time? And if you're going to go through this trial process, Theron Cameron should have been reimbursed some of his legal fees by either the county or the state, because there was no case there, none whatsoever. And thankfully, a jury of his peers agreed. Now, the Twin Falls County prosecutor, Grant Lobes, he's mouthing off during the session like, oh, well, it all worked. Everything worked out how it was supposed to with like Kyle Rittenhouse. And it's like, no, that's not the point. The point in those cases is that there was no evidence that these people did anything wrong, and you still took them to trial because you wanted a political prosecution. That's what we're trying to prevent, is these political style prosecutions that I think are a lot more common than we want to admit. We only heard about Kyle Rittenhouse because of the political nature of the media and everything else pushing it that way. The Theron Cameron story, nobody ever heard about that. How many other stories have happened like that in Idaho that nobody has a clue about because they didn't garner the media national attention? So to me, that's a big deal. And that's what we're trying to prevent. So I appreciate you guys tuning in. This has been episode 1 of Guns with Greg. Be sure to subscribe to all of our channels, in particular in Rumble, just because we're going to put these episodes as many places as we can. However, Rumble is definitely the only place where we're not worried about it being, censored. So you could watch it on YouTube, you can watch it wherever, but we definitely don't want it to be censored. And so Rumble, please subscribe to our Rumble channel. That way you're always getting notified of new content that we put out. So thank you. That's all I've got for now. Take care. God bless.